The sound of a broom striking polished marble echoed through the grand entrance hall just as a little boy wrapped both arms around his father's leg and whispered that he was hungry. Before the father could answer, a sharply dressed maid marched across the gleaming floor, pointed toward the front doors, and declared that both of them were finished. She insisted the janitor had embarrassed the household one too many times and demanded that he leave the estate immediately. Every gardener, housekeeper, and chauffeur stopped what they were doing. The single father lowered his head, held his son's tiny hand, and silently accepted the humiliation. Then, just as he reached the front steps, he slowly removed his faded work hat. What happened next left every person on the property frozen in disbelief. The sprawling Ashcroft Manor had stood on the edge of the countryside for more than a century. Its towering stone walls, endless flower gardens, sparkling fountains, and elegant glass conservatory attracted admiration from everyone who passed by. To those who worked there, however, the mansion represented strict rules, impossible standards, and a constant fear of making mistakes. Every hallway had to shine, every window had to sparkle, and every guest had to believe perfection lived within those walls. Among the dozens of employees was a quiet janitor named Grant Holloway. He arrived before sunrise every morning, pushing an old cleaning cart with worn wheels that squeaked softly across the marble floors. His uniform had been repaired so many times that the stitches formed tiny patterns across the sleeves. His boots were faded, and the brim of his gray work hat hid tired eyes that had seen far more hardship than anyone imagined. Grant never complained. Most employees assumed he was simply another struggling laborer trying to survive from paycheck to paycheck. Few knew that after losing his wife, Claire, to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, he had devoted every moment of his life to raising their 8-year-old son, Owen. The little boy often waited quietly in the staff garden after school, reading library books while his father finished work. They had very little money, yet they laughed often, shared homemade sandwiches on a wooden bench, and ended every afternoon with a promise that tomorrow would somehow be better. Grant believed dignity was not measured by wealth but by how gently a person treated others when life became difficult. Unfortunately, not everyone shared that belief. The mansion's senior maid, Vivian Cross, had spent nearly 20 years climbing through the household ranks. Organized, disciplined, and fiercely protective of the estate's reputation, she demanded flawless performance from every employee. Although she had once been kind, years of responsibility had hardened her heart. She viewed mistakes as weakness and poverty as laziness. Grant became an easy target. Whenever a vase was slightly crooked or muddy footprints appeared after gardeners entered from the courtyard, Vivian blamed the janitor. She criticized his patched uniform, questioned why his son occasionally waited on the property after school, and repeatedly reminded everyone that servants should never become comfortable. Grant simply nodded and continued working. One bright spring afternoon, preparations filled the mansion as important guests were expected for a charity luncheon hosted by the elderly owner, Eleanor Ashcroft. Florists arranged colorful roses, chefs prepared elegant meals, and musicians rehearsed in the sunlit courtyard. Grant had spent hours polishing the grand staircase until every wooden rail reflected sunlight like glass. Just before noon, Owen arrived carrying a small paper bag containing 2 peanut butter sandwiches. As he walked across the courtyard, he tripped over a loose garden hose. The bag slipped from his hands, and the sandwiches scattered across the freshly cleaned stone walkway. The frightened boy immediately knelt to gather everything. Grant hurried toward him, comforting him with a gentle smile before helping pick up the pieces. Vivian witnessed the entire scene. Instead of seeing a scared child, she saw an inconvenience. Her frustration boiled over in front of every employee preparing for the event. She accused Grant of bringing disorder into the household and insisted that allowing his son onto the property demonstrated complete disrespect for the mansion's standards. Without waiting for permission from anyone else, she announced that Grant's employment had ended immediately. Silence swept across the courtyard. No one defended him. Grant slowly picked up his cleaning bucket. He took Owen's trembling hand. Neither argued, neither begged. As father and son walked toward the towering entrance gates beneath the warm afternoon sun, several workers lowered their eyes in quiet shame. Then something unexpected happened. An elegant silver automobile rolled through the front gates. Inside sat Eleanor Ashcroft herself. Although 83 years old, Eleanor possessed remarkable awareness. She immediately noticed employees standing motionless outside and the familiar janitor quietly leaving with his son. She asked what had happened. Vivian confidently explained that she had dismissed the janitor for repeatedly lowering the estate's standards. Eleanor frowned. She asked one simple question. "Who gave you that authority?" Vivian hesitated. No answer came. Grant gently removed his faded work hat, revealing neatly combed silver hair and calm, thoughtful eyes that no longer belonged to a defeated employee. Instead of continuing toward the gate, he turned back. Eleanor smiled warmly. She walked directly toward him. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she embraced him. Gasps spread through the courtyard. Vivian stared without understanding. Eleanor looked toward the assembled staff with tears glistening in her eyes. She explained that Grant Holloway was not merely the estate's janitor. He was the legal owner of Ashcroft Manor. Shock rippled through every corner of the property. Years earlier, Eleanor had become gravely ill. With no children of her own willing to care for the estate, she had searched for someone who valued people more than possessions. Her late husband had always believed that true character appeared only when someone believed nobody important was watching. Grant had once saved Eleanor's life after she collapsed near a small community library. He stayed beside her for hours, refusing any reward. During countless visits afterward, she learned about his honesty, devotion to his family, and quiet compassion. When her health declined, Eleanor secretly transferred ownership of the estate into a carefully protected trust, naming Grant as future owner. However, she requested one unusual condition: Grant would spend 1 full year working anonymously among the household staff. No one except Eleanor and her attorney knew his identity. She wanted to discover whether the employees truly respected every person equally. Grant accepted because he believed wealth should never prevent someone from understanding ordinary people. During that year he cleaned bathrooms, repaired broken furniture, swept leaves, polished windows, and comforted co-workers facing personal struggles. He quietly paid medical bills for one gardener without revealing his name. He secretly purchased school supplies for a cook's grandchildren. He repaired an elderly housekeeper's leaking roof during his weekends. Nobody knew. Not once did he mention the fortune that legally belonged to him. Vivian felt her confidence crumble. Memories rushed back. Every harsh criticism, every cold glance, every unnecessary humiliation, every moment she had judged him solely because of his uniform. The afternoon sunlight seemed almost unbearable. Owen looked up at his father with confusion. Grant knelt beside his son and smiled. He explained that owning beautiful buildings meant very little if the people inside forgot how to care for one another. Eleanor proudly watched him. That single sentence confirmed she had chosen wisely. Over the following weeks, Grant officially assumed responsibility for Ashcroft Manor. Many employees feared immediate dismissal, expecting revenge for months of mistreatment. Instead, Grant surprised everyone. No one lost their job that day. He gathered every employee beneath the large oak tree overlooking the gardens. He spoke quietly about grief, humility, second chances, and the invisible burdens every person carried. He admitted there had been mornings when he wanted to quit because memories of Claire still hurt. There were days he skipped lunch so Owen could have enough to eat. There were evenings when exhaustion nearly overwhelmed him, yet kindness from strangers had carried him through his darkest moments. He wanted Ashcroft Manor to become known not for luxury but for compassion. New policies followed. Every employee received improved wages. Parents were allowed flexible schedules for school events. A childcare room was created inside the old library wing. Education grants became available for workers' children. Mental health counseling was offered without cost. The mansion's kitchens prepared daily meals for local families facing hardship. The estate gardens donated fresh vegetables to neighborhood shelters. Slowly, the atmosphere transformed. Laughter returned to hallways once filled only with anxious silence. Workers greeted each other warmly. Gardeners shared flowers with visitors. Housekeepers felt respected rather than frightened. The mansion became a home instead of merely an impressive building. Vivian changed more than anyone. Ashamed by her behavior, she requested a private meeting with Grant. She admitted that years of chasing perfection had slowly stolen her compassion. She confessed that she had forgotten every uniform covered a real human being with dreams, fears, and struggles. Grant listened without interruption. When she finished, tears filled her eyes. She expected dismissal. Instead, Grant offered forgiveness. He believed genuine remorse deserved an opportunity for growth. Vivian remained at Ashcroft Manor, but not as the same person. She began helping new employees instead of criticizing them. She spent afternoons reading stories with workers' children. She personally organized food drives for struggling families. Her authority became rooted in encouragement rather than fear. Months later, local newspapers praised Ashcroft Manor as one of the region's most compassionate employers. Visitors admired the beautiful gardens, elegant architecture, and sparkling halls. Those who worked there admired something far greater. They admired a man who never allowed wealth to erase humility. Grant still wore simple clothes that he still carried cleaning supplies from time to time. Whenever guests asked why the owner polished windows alongside employees, he simply smiled and continued working. Owen grew up surrounded not by luxury but by generosity. He learned that respect should never depend on someone's title, clothing, or income. One warm afternoon nearly a year after everything changed, Owen stood beside the same entrance where his father had once been humiliated. Families filled the gardens, employees laughed together during a community celebration, and children chased butterflies across the lawns. The painful memory remained, but it no longer carried bitterness. It had become the beginning of something beautiful. Grant quietly looked across the estate and realized the greatest inheritance Eleanor had given him was never the mansion itself. It was the opportunity to prove that kindness could rebuild broken hearts, restore broken communities, and transform broken people. Perhaps that is the greatest wealth anyone can ever possess. Before you leave this story behind, take a quiet moment to reflect on its message. Have you ever misjudged someone because of their appearance, their job, or their circumstances? Share your thoughts and the lesson that stayed with you, because your reflection may encourage someone else to choose compassion over judgment. The afternoon sun settled gently over Ashcroft Manor as children laughed, flowers swayed in the breeze, and people from every walk of life gathered together without fear or pride. The mansion was no longer remembered as a place where status mattered most. It became a symbol of hope, forgiveness, humility, and the quiet truth that a person's greatest value can never be measured by the clothes they wear or the work they do. And in the heart of one grateful single father, the deepest victory was not that he owned a magnificent estate, but that he had turned it into a place where every person felt seen, respected, and truly at home.